Hello, everyone, and welcome to Studio C in beautiful West Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. This is video, I think it's number 5 in our GUI tutorial series using Java's IntelliJ, or using IntelliJ's Java UI Designer. In today's example, we're going to kind of start to explore some of the more components. So we are going to create this little golf tournament manager. The idea behind this thing would be to have it register players for a tournament. So we just got a few things in here. We're going to show you how it works. The register button actually in this video is not actually going to do anything. We're going to save that for a future video when we talk about creating maybe an object, an instance of a registered member, and kind of show you kind of the more of the big picture. So this is just more about how the components actually can work together. So we have a standard text field. One of the things we have that's new is a J slider, and if you notice, if I move this J slider, it tells you what your handicap is. Allows me to go up from 20 to minus 20. So we'll talk about how you can do something like that. We have a checkbox, which is there that are on or off. And I've also used a series of checkboxes here, but I'm actually going to change them to be what are called radio buttons when we get to them. And you'll notice one thing that's unique about these ones is I can only click on one of these boxes at a time. So that's one little bit of the component. And then one of the things you'll notice is as I change the professional, it's updating the tournament fee. So we got a few little things in here that we're going to play around with to show you how these things kind of work. So one thing is this slider will affect this. Whether or not the checkbox is selected will affect this. These we'll show you how to use them in the future, but we're going to show you how to combine them together into certain selections. All right, let's get started. All right, here I am in my new Java class. Remember, I right-clicked and said new. Just went and did. Let's see here. Just remind you, right-click new. Swing UI Designer, and then you pick a GUI form. So I've done that, and so I've got to this point in time. I called mine, let's see if we can get rid of some of these other ones out of your way so you can focus on what we're doing. And so I've called mine Golf Tourney Manager. And the one thing, again, to make sure you do, this is really, really important, so that's why I decided to pause the video here, is to make sure you name this panel. So there I've got this panel selected here, and I've given that a name, and I'm going to call it main panel to my main container. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add the 5 panels. Again, I suggest you do use separate panels for different components of your window for the 5 steps. All right, so I've created my panels just to indicate what they look like. I've got a panel for the name area, the handicap area, the register. It's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, it looks like I might even need a sixth panel. So maybe we'll combine a couple of these here just to save ourselves a little bit of time. And again, the reason you might want to do these in panels, one is it helps you with layout, but secondly, there are things we can do that say, hey, you know what, maybe we don't want this panel to show up yet. Maybe we don't want this tournament fee panel to show up unless all of these items are selected. You can do that. There's a property called set visible. So for example, if I was to click on here, I'll go grab that there again. There is a visibility property that is in here somewhere. See if I can find it quickly for you. Nope, can't. But it's actually a one line of code that says set visible to false. And so you can do that at the beginning in your constructor, and then that doesn't show up. And then you'd have to have some kind of code that says if all of these have been selected, set visibility of this to be true, or have one of them trigger set visibility to true, like a next button or something like that. So it's good to kind of start to layer things out in panels as best you can, because it'll give you more flexibility a little bit later on. If you're going to code with that, so if I was going to make this visible or invisible, then it'd probably be a good idea to go in and name those fields. We may need to do that anyway, so I'm just going to go in and quickly name those as well. I'm just going to simply call them panel 1, panel 2, panel 3, panel 4, and later on that way we avoid any errors. So I can do that right now, and then I'll be ready to go. All right, so I've named my first 4 panels, but I actually deliberately have not labeled the last 5 named the last 5 panel yet. So there's panel 1, 2, 3, 4. Just call it. But panel 4, you'll see here doesn't have a name. The reason I wanted to show you that is if I go over to the actual Java code, what you'll notice is that panel 5, this last panel, doesn't appear here yet. So there's my main panel as always, but there's my panels 1, 2, 3, 4, and the last one isn't there. So what that means is even though I've created, or it looks like I've created it in my GUI form, it actually hasn't created the Java version of it first. So it is really important with panels that you go in and name every one of them. Oops, looks like I've got some of them out of order here. Which ones do I not have named? Okay, so I'm going to have to rename this a little bit here. But for the time being, I'm just going to call it panel 5. As I was clicking around, I did them out of order, but that's fine. So that way you make sure you have them all named and a way to go. That way they won't give you any issues later on. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull in all the components, and so when the video is done, essentially what I want to do, well, the first ones are obvious. When we get down to the bottom, we're going to work with J, where are they here? J checkboxes and J radio buttons. Now, normally a checkbox is something that either goes in on by itself or in a situation where you might want them to be able to select more than one of those things. So if you wanted to say, in my things I had, what clubs are you a member of? Maybe I wanted to say what clubs have you played over the last year, so you'd want multiple checkboxes. Radio buttons, which work and are coded almost identically, those tend to be designed to be pick one of the following. So in my case, what I want to know is what club you are a member of or are you playing on behalf of in this tournament. So I'm going to use a radio button because the standard practice is for that to be one. So I'm going to throw them all on, pause the video, I'm going to throw them all on, then you can throw all yours on once you see them in action. All right, so I've started to add some of my components. I'm going to add one more down here because I just want to show you a little bit about the functionality, how it works. So the top is obvious. I've got a label and a JText field. I've got another label and I've got a checkbox, so J checkbox over here. I've got another label and I've got three radio buttons, and I'm just going to show you what happens if I pull one of these radio buttons. The same thing works with the checkbox. So I'm going to pop it in there. It's going to automatically try to distribute them across the screen, which is nice. And whenever you pull these in, if you leave it selected, you can actually start typing right away with the text, and it'll automatically go. So if I want to say Petroleum Club, another golf course around. Actually, let's go with one that I've golfed, the Ranch Golf Club. You can see as soon as I hit enter, it creates it there. So get these in and pause your video, get these in, and I'm going to continue by putting in the last few components. All right, so I've added the label, another JText field, and a button for the bottom, but I've not labeled the area where I'm going to do the handicap because I want to talk to you about the J slider a little bit as well as a little bit on layout. So what I want to do with this is a handicap. For those of you who don't know golf, handicap is kind of like your average score above or below par, and it's often used in tournaments to help make it fair for everybody. So that's what we're going to kind of get people to do here. So I'm going to pull in a J label, and I want my just for layout purposes, I want my J label to go over here. And so I'm just going to say, what is your handicap? And then I'm going to use that slider. So what I want to do is I want to pull in a J slider. And below it, though, I'm going to put some text where it is, right near the bottom. Don't get confused with J spinners. They actually work a lot differently, a lot harder to work with than sliders. So I'm going to pull my J slider in here. I'm going to hopefully get it to go beside that. Good, that's what I was hoping it to do. And the J slider will default in the middle, but that's a changeable setting. It'll also default whatever value you want to give that. So we're going to play around with that. And then the label here, we're going to say, see if I get that to go below. There we go. Oh, no, it didn't go. Let's try it again. J label, right. Come on, there we go. And we're going to say handicap, and we'll leave it at nothing until they move this slider. Okay. Now I'm going to go on that one, and let's get that to be centered, horizontal center. All right, and now we're pretty much getting ready to start building some functionality. So let's just do a little preview of everything here, see what it looks like, and right-click that little icon again, and there's my preview button. Again, the window sizing isn't ideal. It would be nice if we had a little bit of spacing and things like that around it, and that's for the future. So just to show you the functionality, we can turn this on or off. We can choose any one of these. Actually, you'll notice I did that kind of deliberately because we haven't done that setting yet. Is for the moment we can click all four of those, but we don't want them to be able to do that. So that's a function we're going to have to write in code. And it's not hard. You just have to be aware that something called a button group that ties these together. And then we, of course, have the slider, which right now doesn't do anything. Okay. The plan is to have the professional box alter the fee. So you can see that in action. I want to have the slider alter the handicap, so you can see that in action. And in the process, you'll be able to figure out how you could use the slider for other things. You'll see it's pretty easy to do. And I'm simply going to, with these ones, the only function I'm going to do is bring that that thing called a button group in that ties these together, so we'll only pick one. So really the fee is only affected by Are You Professional, but we could certainly have tied other things in, like maybe if they're a low handicap, we charge them extra because they're going to be in an advanced division. Who knows, right? But we're not going to worry about that for this video. All right, let's get started. First thing we're going to do is we're going to make the professional affect the fee box. So because of that, what we want to do is definitely start to name our things that are unique and that that we're coding together. So the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that this text field here is differentiated from this text field here with a name, so that I can make sure I allocate. So this is called a fee field. All right, I had a couple interruptions while I was paused, so hopefully I don't lose my momentum. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're ready to start writing the functionality. So what we need to do is decide which of our components triggers the action. Because remember, you have your action performed that you need to deal with. So what I did say is that this professional one is going to affect the fee. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click that particular thing, and I'm going to create the listener on that box, J checkbox. So I'm going to, there's a couple different options you can do this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to use what's called the ChangeListener. So the ChangeListener is going to look for any change in state. So by state in computing science, I mean like the change of whatever variable this thing would be tracking. In this case, it would be tracking whether it's checked on as true or unchecked as false. So if that variable has changed state, it's going to look for that. So we go into there, we just click OK. And you'll see that once it does it, it says state change. So that means that when this is altered its current state. So what we want to do is we want to change the fee, okay, from whatever it is right now to whatever it is. Now right now it's empty when we first run it, but so even in the future if they check or uncheck that, we want to change each time. So let's go and name this so I make sure I know which one it is. So I'm going to, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to give it a value. Right now it's just JText field 2. So I'm going to call it fee field, and I'll work with that name now from here on out. So now I'll go back to my code and I'm going to use that fee field. So that's what we're going to do, right? So we're going to do fee field dot set, there it goes, set text. Okay, so that's the key. Now, what do we want to set text to be? Well, it depends. This is obviously a little bit of what we of how we want to do this. So essentially, we need an if statement, right? That's what a checkbox is. It's a true or a false. So we're going to wrap this in an if-else statement. So we're going to have an if, and it says if. Now, what's this actually called? Professional checkbox up here. That's one way you can quickly remind yourself what the name is if you forget. So if professional checkbox, and its dot is selected. So that's how easy those things are. So it's a true-false statement, right? So if it's selected as true, then we want to set our text. And let's say, so remember, if they are professional, they're going to pay more. So maybe, I don't know, maybe we're going to do, where's my close? Clear the brace for that. Sorry, let's back this up a little bit. There. Okay. If is selected, we're going to set text to be, now, I was going to originally do $7. I might not want to do that. Let's say it's $120 for professionals and $100 for non-professionals. I don't know, let's just do that. So first of all, let me just get that else statement in. And we set the text fee to something else. Now, there's nothing wrong with setting it to put the $sign in there. That's what I want to actually point out to you. However, you just have to be careful that when you pull this text out at a later date, if it has that $sign in there and you're interested in converting it and parsing that into dollars, right, into an int or a double for processing in a future part of a program, then you're going to have to get rid of that $sign somewhere or in other ways, because that text is going to be there. So when you get text from this field in the future, you're going to have to take off, use substring or something, and get rid of that $sign if you want it there. It looks good, but the other option would be to get rid of the $sign there and add it to your label, right? So if I go back to that, what I mean by that is I could put fee $sign here and just put it here. But the other thing we might want to do here is make this, while I'm thinking of it, we want to make this text field down here to not be editable, because we don't want them to be able to set their own fee. We want to be able to charge them only what we want to charge them. Okay. Now there's other things we could do with fees too, right? We could deal with handicap. We could do with something else. Let's say maybe you're not a big fan of, or maybe the ranch is hosting this tournament, so they get a bit of a discount, right? Maybe they get $10 off if the ranch is selected. So why don't we actually do that as well? But then we need to put a change listener on there. So no, we won't bother. The one thing, though, you might want to do, though, is you might find you need to check a whole bunch of these boxes. Is it Sandpiper? Is it Mayfair? Is it Blackhawk? Maybe we're charging some fees. If it's two others, we want to charge them with fees. So it can be tricky to have a series of is-else statements. They just use is selected just like this. But then we'd have to say, if is selected, else if, else, etc. So as soon as you get more complicated than having just something like maybe 3 or 4, you might want to actually throw them into an array list. So you can have an array list of J. In this case, they would be J radio buttons, and then you could loop them through with a for loop of some kind, saying is if selected, do something. Otherwise, you assume the other ones aren't, because we're going to fix that in a sec. So they can't be. Okay. So just be aware that there are some extra functionality you can use if you want to get this to be a little more complicated. Okay, that's all I wanted to do with the first one. So I guess we should run this. Now that we have a listener, we can create our main. Our main. So, oops, I must have an error in here. What do I got wrong? I must have a curly bracing issue. There's there. Where's the end of that? No, so why do I have an error? Where is my error? I feel like I do have a curly bracing error. So I think I'm going to add there and do an edit, a code format. Where is it? Reformat code. Nope. Yes, there we go. That looks better. Took care of the error too. Okay, no, that's what I thought. All right, so now let's go in. Again, as a reminder, when you want to generate your main, you need to make sure you're doing it in the class and not inside anything else, or at least I find that's a little bit good. So I'm going to write this comment is in class. I should always do that at the beginning, but I always forget because I get so excited about doing these videos. And now I'm going to right click, and it is generate form main. So the main method for this form. So golf tournament manager, and we can add some extra functionality again a little bit later on. And now we can run this code. Control Shift F10 the first time to set this one as my main, because I have other files going. Got my samples up here, which is why those are there. I should get those out of our way. And let's have a look. So remember, the only functionality we've done right now is the fee. And there we go. If I change state, it changes. Now, you might have noticed that it started at 100, and originally we said it was starting at 0. And the reason is that when it runs this thing for the first time, the state technically gets changed. Now, you can fix that if you want. You could add the set text to nothing right off the bat, and you would do that in your, let me see where would be the best place to do it. You would do that probably in your constructor, where you'd add a, I'm just going to say end constructor here, a line that says fee field dot set text to be nothing. Right, for black. Now let me just comment that out again, just in case you missed that. So I will, I'll run it right now. So I didn't close it. And you'll see that at first, when it pops up without that line of code in, that the, oh, it didn't. I thought it did. Maybe I just, hold on, let me try that again. Oh, that's interesting. I just had to actually give it focus, and it changed the fee. So that is interesting. Okay, so actually this line won't help us then, because it seems like just giving it focus by putting your mouse over it caused it to change state. So that is kind of interesting. So we'll leave it the way this is. And I don't need this line. But this is something you could do if in the future. A little bit embarrassing there, but that's right. Okay, so let's see. What's next? All right, what's next is really, really quick. All I want to do is show you how you would make this so that these cannot be selected more than, so you can only select one club. So just as a reminder, when I run it right now, I do have the ability to select any one of these and multiple ones of these clubs, which, sometimes is what you want. You have a tendency to, or kind of like the standard practices is if you are going to give users the ability to select more than one, they actually use the the check boxes. These are called radio buttons of circles, and those tend to be used on for one thing, so such as like a multiple choice test that you only get to pick one of those answers. You tend to do this. So here's how you do that function. It's actually really simple. It uses something called a button group. Now in some editors I've seen, for example, I've worked with the NetBeans GUI builder. You actually have to pull in a button group as a separate component. You don't have to do that in IntelliJ. All you have to do is assign each of these a button group. Now, when you click on one of them, one of the properties, if you scroll down, is button group. Where is it? There it is right there, button group. And you can see there isn't one, right? And so if you click that, you'll see there's none, or there is, because we don't have any made, a new. So if I had made a few, done new a couple times, they would all appear in this list. So I'm going to simply say new, and I would call this clubs group for what golf club they're part of. Click OK. And now this was part of clubs group, and Mayfair, we say now clubs group becomes automatically part of that pop-down list. And you'll notice if you look on the GUI that it has this little line that connects them, and that helps give you a visual back in this side that's the way this does. So the functionality simply says now we can't accidentally allow users to select more than one group, which is going to be really handy later on. That now you can see I choose Blackhawk, but if I choose Mayfair, Blackhawk gets deselected. Okay, so pretty simple. So if you're doing this and say creating a multiple choice test, you'd have a button group for each question. So question 1 group, question 2, question 3, question 4. All right, the last bit of key functionality I want to talk about today in this video is the JSlider. And I like JSliders. They look kind of cool, but they're also actually quite simple to use. So the trick with the JSlider, though, is setting up its starting properties. What do you want these numbers to represent? The default, you'll see here, and I'll scroll down so you see where you can find it, is in with this maximum and minimum, and a little bit further down the current value. So what it's saying is that right now the current value is going to be 50, and its max value is 100, and its min value is 0. Now, for golf handicaps, you don't have anybody with a handicap of 100 or a handicap of 0. Your handicaps are a plus or minus above par. So what I thought we'd do in the example do the same is I thought I'd go from like a -20 to +20. Now I'm not really a golfer. I golf maybe once a year, so I'm not exactly sure how handicaps work, but I think it might be reasonable to suggest that that's the range, or at least for our tournament, we're going to say that's our minimum maximum range of handicaps. So what we're going to do is we're going to say that the maximum value is going to be 20. The minimum value is going to be -20, and then it changes value for me because it used to say 50, but now the max is 50. So you'll notice also over here it jumps over there. So I'm going to set this value at 0, and when I click off, it's going to go to the middle. Okay, so now what we want to do is use this JSlider when it changes to update the label, so because I want this to say visually what this is representing. Okay, and it's actually really simple to do. So we need a listener for this. So in case you can't tell, I'm still clicking on the JSlider, create listener, and I'm going to also go with a ChangeListener because I don't want to know when they click on it, does it have to update? I just want it knows when it moves it. So the same kind of listener as before, state changed, okay, and what do we want to do? Well, we want to set that label. Now, we have multiple labels, so we better go give that label a name, right? So let's go give this label a name. And right now, it's called nothing, and we're going to call it handy. Why don't we call it handy label? Nice and simple. Okay. So handy label right now has the text of handicap, so we're going to change that text. All right. So when the state of this is changed, we're going to set handy label to the value of the slider. Now, I'm going to do this in 2 lines just to make it obvious what's going on so that you can use this in other functions a little bit later on, a little bit easier to understand. So the JSlider simply takes an integer. So I'm going to say int handicap equals what is it actually called? JSlider1, or actually I guess I could have looked right there, just slider1 actually. So slider1 dot, look at that, what popped up, get a value right off the top. Now you notice there's other things in here you can make this work. By the way, the tick spacing has to do with maybe you don't want it to go every 1. Maybe you want it to do every 0.5, right, and turn this into a double. Or maybe you want it to go just every 5. You're only going to allow them to have handicaps of 0, 5, 10, 15, 20. You can do that with that tick spacing. That's what that does. So get value. And that works just as simply as that. There is no trick to working with the J slider. It's really, really simple. So then we do handicap. Oh, what did I call it? Handy. What did I call that label? I call it handicap. Handy label. Oh, because I called it Hancy label. Well, that was silly of me. Okay. Embarrassing. Handy label. There it goes. Handy label dot set text, and we want to say, if we want to use the word handicap, probably not a bad idea. So maybe we'll say like your handicap. I did it again. Plus this handicap variable we just created. And let's give that a run. Let's see how she goes. There we go. I got a handicap of -11, handicap of 17. My professional fee works. I'm only able to do one thing at a time. So there is your crash course on some of the other components. Now those are all the main components we're going to work with. If you go and look at your palette, you'll see there are different kinds of panes that work with. So you can have a scroll pane that works with a text area. So you can have a scroll bars. We have password fields. Password fields have the stars when you type in them. They are a little bit harder to use than a regular text field because they actually don't return strings. They return character arrays. You just got to play around them a little bit more. There's some other kinds of text fields you can get a little bit more power, but these are the main ones we're going to work with. There's also the J spinner, which allows you to generate a number that way. They're just a slightly bit harder to get to generate or to get the code that comes out of that spinner than say a J slider, but they work pretty well, and then a few other things as well. But those are the main ones we're going to work with. If I do introduce any other ones in a future example, I'll deal with them at that point in time. After this, we're going to work on improving the look of this a little bit, and we're going to work with images, and then we're going to work at how would you put this into a program where, let's say, I actually want to register a golfer and kind of have it just combine with a bigger picture project. And that is about where we'll end for this video tutorial series. Might do a little bit on layouts, but not that much more, but hopefully that'll give you enough to leap off. All right, thanks everybody.